All right, we're live.
All right, we're live now. We're just going to jump in real quick, talking about our prelim notables. We're going to rip through these.
We are all over the place to start the show today. It's on me.
A quick, short, sweet one. I just want to mention this opener fight, Long Zhao versus Chang Ho Lee. It's so weird. The UFC always does this, like every year, or maybe even more often. There's like a PFL style UFC tournament in Asia. It's like Road to the UFC, I think it's called. I believe that's how Tatsuro Taira came up, and he's now, big Japanese star. So yeah, just want to mention that we as American fans never hear about this Road to the UFC thing, but I would be intrigued if it's like an Asian contender series type of deal. That would be pretty dope. Anyways, want to talk about some actual prelim notables. First up, we got Cedric Dumas. Who's he fighting again? Dennis Tui Louis-Lin. And I am going with Cedric Dumas. I actually feel like this is a pretty good line here for Dumas. I remember there was something that happened in his last fight that kind of was like a fraud check moment. I could be incorrect about that, but Dennis Tui Louis-Lin, Tululin, however you say it, I always mess that one up. He's given me absolutely nothing to be confident about. Lost his last 3 fights by finish, last 2 by TKO. And Cedric Dumas is a guy that has hands. He reminds me of, like some of these faster paced, want to put it on you early, quick lightweights, and like very Terrence McKinney-esque, especially with the hair flying everywhere when he's working. So I'm going with Cedric Dumas. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Dennis Tululian, whatever. We know who we're talking about. He's right there on the screen for you. I think he's obviously trending down. 11-9 UFC, 3 losses. I think he's around just to. He's got some good names that he's lost to, but yeah, I think you said it all. I think Cedric Dumas is on the up and up. He's on the climb. He's 28 years old, a little bit tall, a little bit longer. Uses that reach and uses that stand up striking skill a little bit better. So I'm right there with you with Cedric Dumas. Moving up the card on our prelim notables. I'm going with Rinat Fakhretdinov against Nicholas Dalby. Nicholas Dalby is 4-1 over his last 5. But when we sit here and we look at the competition that Nicholas Dalby has faced, he had the upset over Gabriel Bonfim, knockout. The Bonfim brothers were, taking the UFC by storm until he ran into the buzzsaw that is the Danish Dynamite, Nicholas Dalby. He's also got a wins over Muslim Salikov, Warley Alves, and Claudio Silva. But even though there's a lot of good names, he is aging. You can see he's 39 years old in the 170-pound division. Against Rinat Fakhretdinov, he had a majority decision against Elijah Zaleski, who we saw, recently. Go out there and perform really well. He does have a submission over Kevin Lee, which at the end of the day, even though he fought Kevin Lee, and that's not necessarily something to hang your hat on, he did get the win and he did look good doing it. He did submit, the grappler in Kevin Lee. Also, Brian Battle, he didn't have a lot of really good competition up until this point. A lot of that you may not be able to fault him for. If somebody's really good, there's a high percentage of the time people just want to avoid fighting them. So I'm not going to hold that against Rinat Fakhretdinov here. I'm going to take him to get this one done. I think he's better in pretty much everywhere this fight's going to go. What do you think?
Right there with you. I do like Nicholas Dalby quite a bit, though. He has like this one little thing that he does when he's fighting. He has like a breathing technique where he always looks exhausted. He's like, from the second the fight starts. And I do like
belly breathing, right? That like deep diaphragm breathing that Michael Chandler does. It's supposed to be the best for cardio breathing.
This is like almost that much more exaggerated, though. Like Michael Chandler, you see his belly coming in and out. Nicholas Dalby is vocal when he does it. It's like very Boss Rutan-esque. But I do like Rinat Fakhretdinov here. Like you said, I think the grappling is like the biggest advantage that he has here because Nicholas Dalby is good on his feet, good at striking, good when the clinch breaks apart. You might see him land a couple of quick little shots in there. But the big coming out party for Fakhretdinov was that win over Kevin Lee. Sure, it was against Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee's come back to fight to the UFC, but Fakhretdinov came out of nowhere and surprised everybody. I think he's going to have a nice win this week. Probably get it done by submission. What do you think, Tom? What do you got next?
Yeah. Up next is Nasrat Haqparast, Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon is a really interesting fighter. He's a guy who, has had his ups and downs. He has performed well against a lot of people, but he's never really showed anything to make me think that he is, capable of not chasing a belt. And the top 10 is questionable at times. I think he is just he's a good enough fighter to be in the UFC and consistently fight, but I don't think we're going to see him rise up the rankings anytime soon. And that's shown by, he has a loss to Grant Dawson, come back and beat Leonardo dos Santos by decision, lost to Paddy Pimblett in a back and forth fight that I really do think he did win there. So, and then you had the accidental clash of heads against Bobby Green, got a win against Mark Madsen, which actually was a really good win for him because Mark Madsen, the Olympian, I think that was I guess you could call it a coming out party for the 35-year-old. Now you have Nasrat Haqparast 3-2 over his last 5. A long length of schedule here when you look at his last 5. Lost to Dan Hooker by decision, Bobby Green by decision, came back, John Makdessi, Landon Quinones, and especially Jamie Malarkey knocked him out, which, we know Jamie Malarkey to take a lot of damage, but, be able to tolerate it. Nasrat Haqparast going in there and knocking him out shows us signs of what he could be and maybe used to be. The fact that he's 28 years old. He's had a long career in those 28 years. He's coming into his prime now. He has looked better in his last 3 fights. He got really high really earlier in his career. I guess I don't want to call it early on. It's 3 months. He's 25, 26 years old, taking on Dan Hooker, taking on guys like Bobby Green. I don't know. Maybe he's a little bit young for that level of competition. They were also a little bit better back then than they are now. Bobby Green obviously just having another good win. So I don't want to say that those guys are washed, but it was the level of competition maybe Nasrat Haqparast wasn't quite prepared for. And honestly, he looks a lot like Kelvin Gastelum. So when I think Kelvin Gastelum and Nasrat Haqparast, I get those guys mixed up a lot. So I don't know. Maybe that's on me. Maybe that's saying something. Maybe it's not. But nevertheless, I like Nasrat Haqparast in this one. I think he's better on the feet. I think he's got a strong ground game. And I think Jared Gordon just doesn't possess enough skills that he's overly better or that he's much better than Nasrat Haqparast at to get this one done. So Nasrat Haqparast, I think he's going to win 2, probably 3 of the rounds. What do you think?
Right there with you, bro. Jared Gordon has given me nothing to make him think he's going to win this fight. I want to talk about one more. That's Shara Bullet Magomedov. Big setup fight here. Prelim closer. Local hometown guy to some degree, right? It's all Russian, Middle Eastern fighters up and down this card. And it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's just you look at him and what he's going to bring to the table. He's going to put on a sick striking show. And Joyton Lutherbach, never heard of him, honestly. And we've been doing this show how many years? He's not a name that's – it's his UFC debut. Shara Bullet's going to get the W pretty easily here. And it's a pretty good line. Sure, he had like a couple of flashes, right? He's blind in that one eye, and he had a couple of moments in that last fight around. But, even off his back, he's dangerous with those up kicks and everything. So I'm gonna go with Shara Bullet Magomedov to close out the prelims, get the hometown fans excited. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how he's able to fight in the UFC if he is blind in one eye. I know Michael Bisping did it, but he did it by getting over on the doctors, which you would hope would get better in the last 10 or so years. A guy who's so clearly potentially blind, potentially having an ailment. I mean, he must be able to see out of it. I don't think they would be able to any commission would allow somebody openly blind in one eye to compete. But nevertheless, I think he showed a lot of good things. He certainly got a lot behind him coming into this fight. They're fighting at what weight are they fighting at here? I'd imagine it's 185. It's middleweight, 85. Jolton Lutherbach most recently weighing in at 165 pounds, so severely undersized. UFC debut. I think this is Shara Magomedov's opportunity to really assert himself, have a big knockout, great showing, and get some hype behind him if people don't already know who he is. So I'm right there with you. I think Shara's going to get this one done.
Yep. Our main card.
Here we go. All right, you take it first.
All right, we got Johnny Walker versus Volkan Oezdemir. The last time that we saw Johnny Walker fight in the desert was when he got binked on the head, and the doctor was like, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm in the desert." He's going to be back in Riyadh this time around. First time we're seeing him there since that moment. And unless that was I'm pretty sure it was in Abu Dhabi that he said, "I'm in the desert." Yes, I mean, he's super active, right? He just fought in Phoenix a couple of months ago, I think. He's been in a couple of deserts recently, but I like Johnny Walker to win this one. -120 favor against Volkan Oezdemir. Way more active than Oezdemir. And, he got knocked out in his last fight against Magomed. We see Johnny Walker get knocked out sometimes. He actually comes back off of knockouts really, really well. Right? We saw that knockout against Jamal Hill. He came back and put up a nice little win streak. So I'm going to go with Johnny Walker Blue to bounce back off of this one, off of that knockout, and beat Volkan Oezdemir. Probably, 3-round decision. He's got really good takedown defense from Johnny Walker, and I think he's going to see so much success on his feet against Volkan, being awkward, being weird, that Volkan's going to shoot takedowns, and it's just going to disrupt his game plan, and Johnny Walker's going to come out victorious with this one. What do you think, Tom?
I'm actually going the other way, especially at plus 100. I'm going with Volkan Oezdemir. I think he's a little bit, especially compared to Johnny Walker, he's a lot more tame of a fighter. He's a lot more traditional, and I think he's a little bit more within himself. And I think Johnny Walker always has the propensity to get a little wild, get a little crazy, and get knocked out because of it. Volkan Oezdemir, with his wins, he has the ability to submit. I know Johnny Walker has a pretty decent ground game, but I think he is also, like I said, clumsy. I think that's a bad quality to possess when you're in the UFC. I think it makes you a really hard bet, and especially at minus money here. I know he's the taller guy, not always a good thing. Does have a big reach, but he has a big reach over a lot of different guys. So I don't think he's going to have too different of a game plan going in here. I think Volkan Oezdemir is going to do his best to try and take it to the ground and see what he can do. But, going the decision with Paul Craig makes me feel, confident in his ability on the ground. And, we did see against a couple bigger time opponents, a couple more quality opponents, is when Johnny Walker tends to not necessarily show up. Sure, you can show up against Jan Kutalaba. Yeah, you can get a win over Paul Craig. Yeah, you can get a win over Anthony Smith. Magomed Ankalaev, accidental eagle knee. And then obviously that round 2 uppercut that happened 6 months ago or 5 months ago coming in here. A little bit of a short turnaround for him, but, you lose to Thiago Santos. You got knocked out by Jamal Hill. Yeah, sure, you came back against Jan Kutalaba. But again, I think Volkan Oezdemir is of solid competition in the 185-pound division. Lost to only Nikita Krylov, Magomed Ankalaev, and Yuri Prohashki. He's got a win over Alexander Rakic too, so can't discredit that. Over time, he's gotten a little bit better. It's going to be a close fight. There's a reason why he's plus 100 and why it's the odds are so close. But shit, if I don't know who's going to win, I'm going to go with the guy who I'm not going to lose money on. So I guess I'll go with Volkan Oezdemir to get this one done, being a little more traditional.
Fair point. Absolutely fair point. Next up, we got Muhammad Naimov versus Felipe Luna. And I'm going to go with Muhammad Naimov. Just, he's been around in the UFC, a couple more fights, debuted in the UFC with a knockout over Jamie Mullarkey. I believe that was a short notice fight too. Now, guy's fighting in front of a home-friendly crowd. He comes out of Tajikistan, more of a local guy, trains out of Denver, Colorado, but it does help to have that local hometown crowd on your side quite a bit. And Felipe Lima's making his UFC debut. With the experience, the location, all those things combined, I'm going to go with Muhammad Naimov. He's got, Jamie Mullarkey's no slouch, and I believe he has a win over Eric Silva in his last fight. Yeah, so he's got a good little resume going for him so far. Surprised to see him on the main card, but you want to build up those local guys, so I understand. So I'm going to go with Muhammad Naimov in this one. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, and I also wouldn't sleep on that win over Nathaniel Wood by decision. Nathaniel Wood known for his really strong chin, so not getting knocked out, not necessarily a knock on Muhammad Naimov, but obviously being able to dish out that leg injury to Eric Silva says what powerful kicks he can have. So I like that a lot against UFC newcomer Felipe Lima. Hasn't fought in 10 months, close to a year. It takes a lot of time between fights. 26 years old, new to the game, as Connor would say. So I'm going to go with Muhammad Naimov to get this one done.
Yeah, all right. I like it. Next up, we got Kelvin Gastelum versus D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez. And this is a really interesting one because D-Rod was undefeated in the UFC, I believe, until his last 2 fights, and now he's on a 2-fight losing streak, knocked out by Ian Gary a year ago, and 6 months before that, submitted by Neil Magny. It was that first big, real step up in competition. You go from Li Jingliang to Neil Magny. That pretty much is the trajectory if you want to move up in the welterweight division. That's kind of the stepping stones that you have to go down. And Smart taking a lot of time off for D-Rod. Coming in here against Kelvin. See, this is a tough one. I thought I had it in my brain which way I was going to go beforehand. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking maybe D-Rod comes back off of the 2-fight losing streak. But his ground game isn't good enough to pose a threat to Kelvin Gastelum. And I think Kelvin Gastelum maybe has the better hands. D-Rod for a while there really did show he had great boxing and everything, but Kelvin Gastelum also has great boxing, has a good ground game if he needs to, good defensive ground game. And I think when it comes down to it, he has more power in his hands and he's a little bit more accurate. So It's going to go one of two ways, right? I think it's either going to be a D-Rod 3-round decision, or it's going to be Kelvin Gastelum, maybe by finish. I think I'm going to go with D-Rod to get the 3-round finish. I mean, I think I'm going to take him to win by decision, though. I think I like him to get the work done over 15 minutes, land more shots. Kelvin Gastelum, I think, will land more powerful shots, but I think D-Rod's going to be letting the combinations flow a little bit more. So I'm going to go with Daniel Rodriguez here. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I just flashed up some of his opponents here, and you look at Preston Parsons, not a huge leg kicker. Kevin Lee, not a huge leg kicker, and Li Jingliang. He actually does kick legs a little bit, but he's primarily a very strong, very quick boxer. And then you look at Neil Magny, you look at Ian Machado Gary, guys that eat up the legs a lot. Kelvin Gastelum is a guy who's going to go in there and be that more robust, full mixed martial artist. I also think he probably has, if they're probably maybe equal at the boxing, maybe a little bit better, but Kelvin's going to have those leg kicks. I think it's going to be a problem for D-Rod. 37 years old, only getting older. We know Kelvin Gastelum's going to have a better takedown defense, so Kelvin's going to dictate where this fight takes place. I also think he probably has a little bit of a better gas tank, so I'm full steam ahead on Gastelum.
Yeah, I just don't think he looked too good at welterweight against Sean Brady, but like you said, D-Rod's not the grappler that Sean Brady is, so
Right.
It's going to be a different fight. He just looked a little bit more sluggish there. I am so pumped for this co-main event. Sergey Pavlovich versus Alexander Volkov. And it's going to be another battle of attrition, similar to like how I think the last fight's going to go down, where you're going to have Volkov maybe playing with Sergey Pavlovich at distance and playing like the pick 'em apart for a 3-round game, or you're going to have Sergey Pavlovich go in there like a bat out of hell and knock Alexander Volkov out in round 1. And I think that's how it's going to go, actually. I think Sergey's going to go in there. He's going to put the pause on Volkov, and he's going to land that one shot that we're all like, oh, my God, is Volkov okay? As Sergey Pavlovich typically does. Hasn't had a fight leave the first round yet in the UFC, and I don't think that's going to be any different if he has his way. But you do have Volkov, one of the most experienced, he is one of the few like point strikers at heavyweight. We saw him go 5 rounds with Cyril Gane. So it's and he's got the range too. He's got some of the longest legs in the UFC. He's, you mentioned it with the last one, the leg kicks. He's really good with the leg kicks. It's going to be a tough fight for Sergey, but we've seen guys like Sergey close the distance on Volkov quickly, because you could be a point striker, but when you have a bulldozer coming at you, it's hard to get out the way. You can't really move. There's a cage there. You can't just keep moving backwards forever. So I think I'm going to go with Sergey Pavlovich to win this one by knockout. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is going to be the Caucasian version of Ngannou versus Rosenstruik, where Volkov's going to come in there and try and point strike him, and Pavlovich is going to be like, yeah, BS, and come in there and just boxing combination his way. I don't think Volkov is going to be able to knock out Pavlovich. I think his type of knockout, should it happen, would be an accumulation damage over time. I just don't think that amount of time is going to take place. It's not going to transpire. He's not going to be able to get off the leg kicks because Sergey Pavlovich is going to move in close, and he's going to land those big hooks, big straights, come right down the pipe, and just surprise Volkov, almost rush him. If he does decide to stay back, I think that hurts Pavlovich because it allows Volkov to get off those kicks and be that martial artist. But if Pavlovich just comes forward like a bulldozer and just is unrelenting, I think he's going to take this one. Not that first one.
Yeah, I think so too. I was going to ask you which round do you think he's going to get it done in. And round 1, it just why stop now? Go out the gates firing all cylinders. Main event, Ikram Alikserov filling in last minute for Khamzat Chimaev. I don't know if you've seen any of the deep fakes. I probably sent you a couple on Instagram. I'll post one on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at Pickinkeith, at pickinfightstom. But there's one of Khamzat that's very funny. Where he's like, "Oh, brother, I'm going to die, brother. I'm very sick." Now he's not. So it's funny to joke about that because he's past all of his COVID stuff when he was coughing up blood, brother. But I actually like this fight better. I know the stakes were higher between a Khamzat Rob Whittaker matchup, right? That's potential number 1 contender spot. Drake is talking about he wants to fight the guy that wins that. And then he wanted Sean Strickland to fight like Marvin Vettori or something. All right, Dreykus, you're starting to get on my nerves a little bit. But this fight makes, like, in terms of the division, it doesn't make as much sense. But in terms of a matchup, it makes way more sense because Ikram is a striker. He's not going to shoot takedowns against Rob. Rob's going to do the point striking thing. Ikram's going to go in there, and he's wild, right? We saw his knockout over Phil Hawes. You and I were there in person in New Jersey. Right. They keep running that one on ESPN nonstop now that Ikram is in the main event. It was on Instagram like 4 times today. But, yeah, it's definitely a more conducive matchup to, like for being fan-friendly. I'm going to go with Rob Whittaker, though, because, you have Ikram filling in short notice. Sure, he's got more power, and we've seen Rob kind of fall off recently. But, Ikram's a little sloppy, and he's a little out there. He puts himself out in space. And against a guy like Phil Hawes, you can get away with that because Phil Hawes isn't going to make those like quick decisions, tap on your chin the way that Rob Whittaker is, or you expose yourself, drop your hands, you're doing something loopy. Rob Whittaker is going to find that potentially. The only thing that scares me is like Rob recently is struggling against unorthodox guys that are sloppy, loopy, weird, and hard to figure out. Like Dreykus. You have Dreykus catching him with that weird off-step jab that he hit him with that ultimately dropped Rob. And you have a guy like Ikram who breaks a clinch with a head kick and does like weird, awkward shit. So maybe you see Rob get caught. It is a 5-round fight. Ikram has the power. I just don't think Rob's chin is truly cracked like that at this point. And I think he's going to find a way over 5 rounds to maybe accumulate damage enough to put out Ikram or win the decision. So I'm going to go with Robert Whittaker here. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think what I totally understand where you're coming from with like the unorthodox style of fighter. But what is more the linchpin for me is not necessarily the orthodox or unorthodox nature. It's how much they're going to come forward. And I think Robert Whittaker does well when he's able to dictate the pace of the fight, whether it's a crazy guy or not. When he's not able to dictate the pace of the fight against Izzy Adesanya, even though Izzy is also kind of an unorthodox fighter, unable to dictate the pace of the fight against Dricus du Plessis, he's a little bit unorthodox and crazy, but he's also high pressure, high volume. I don't think Ikram Alikserov commands the cage, commands the octagon in the way that those two guys did. I think Robert Whittaker is going to be able to cut off the angles, be able to get too close. And I think he's obviously seen all the film and more that we have about, high kicks and stuff. I think he's a veteran at 33 years old, still in his prime. I think he knows what to look out for. I'd be shocked if he gets caught by something. So I'm going Robert Whittaker here. I think he's just more technical. I think he'll be more wary in the first and second round. So you may see, a little bit less action from him, but I think you're going to see him try to start cutting off the cage and try to start, having that ring generalship. And after that point, I think you'll start seeing him popping out that jab and starting to command the cage in a very orthodox manner and taking down Ikram Alikserov. I'm thinking he'll probably win the last 3 rounds, and maybe like a second. But I honestly may anticipate him dropping the first round just because Ikram is going to be in there. He's a little bit crazy. He's going to throw more. He's going to be more active. And Rob's just, I think, going to be like, okay, watch the head kick. Oh, shit, here he comes. What? All right. Here we are. And let his, kind of nerves being, thrust into, essentially like a number 1 contender or, a top 5 matchup for sure. You're going 17-4. I think that's going to come with a little bit of nerves, a little bit of, what are you going to say? Emotion that comes along with it. And I think Robert Whittaker can maybe take advantage of that during the fight out. Second round, get a good shot in there, wake him up a little bit, win the 3rd, 4th, 5th. I'm going with Rob.
And kudos to him for taking another unranked guy, right? Or maybe ranked, low ranked, local, all the things going in Ikram's favor outside of taking this on short notice. So kudos to Rob for taking this as well. And I like what you said, too, about being an octagon general, ring general. Ikram's like a bigger man than Izzy and some of those other guys that you mentioned, but he's flat-footed and has like a real tight, compact stance. So, I like what you said there. He doesn't control as much of the octagon, and he's not going to be maybe early. He'll run forward and run.
Exactly.
Rob. But Rob's got the gas tank, the experience, the ability to withstand an onslaught. So I really like Rob here. We're on the same page with this main event. All right, you want to run through these pick rundown?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So starting at the bottom with our prelim notables, I'm going with Cedric Dumas over Dennis Tuilui-Lin. Renat Fakhretdinov over Nicholas Dalby, Nasrat Haqparast over Jared Gordon, Shara Bullet Magomedov over Joyton Luderbach, I'm torn on this next one, but I'm gonna edge towards Johnny Walker over Volkan Oezdemir. I'm going with Muhammad Naimov over Felipe Lima. I'm gonna go tough one. I'm gonna go with D-Rod over Kelvin Gastelum, Sergey Pavlovich first round knockout over Alexander Volkov, and Rob Whittaker over Ikram Alikserov. All right, Tom.
Cedric Dumas over Dennis Kalulin. I'm going with Rinat Fakhtardinov over Nicholas Dalby, Nasrat Haqparast over Jared Gordon, and Shara Magomedov over Joyton Aluderbach. Going with Volkan Oezdemir over Johnny Walker, Muhammad Naimov over Felipe Lima, Kevin Gastelum over Daniel Rodriguez, Sergey Pavlovich over Alexander Volkov by first or second round knockout, and Robert Whittaker over Ikram Alikserov by decision.
Nice. All right, just want to remind all you kind folks at home that have been with us, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out, helps us grow the channel, gets our presence out there, and we appreciate your support. Please also follow us on Twitter and Instagram @_pickinwinners. Our personal Twitters @pickinkeith, @pickinfightstom. Check us out on Spotify for audio and video. Did I miss anything?
No, I mean, I know we don't have a set schedule of when we pop on here, but when we do, if you're watching on YouTube, both live or, after the fact, drop us a comment. Let us know what you think of the picks. Let us know who you're on, who you're most excited for, and, what you think of, the main event here, the main event switcheroo that's happening in a week, and anything that you want to see us go into and discuss, as long as it contains the UFC. Let us know what you think.
Or even if it's not about the UFC. And also, because we don't have a regular schedule, hit notifications. If you hit that bell next to the subscribe, it'll let you know when we go live. That's about it for me. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Tom. Have a good one.